Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to Office Hours with Michael Kitces. With the flurry of activity surrounding Department of Labor's fiduciary rule and whether it will be delayed or not, there's been a huge increase in media coverage around what it means to be a fiduciary in the first place and why it matters for consumers. And as a result, more and more consumers seem to actually be asking questions about whether the person they work with is a fiduciary or not, which in practice kind of favors today's market, the RIA channel, and puts growing pressure on those who work in insurance companies and broker-dealers. And so in that context, I want to kick off this week's Office Hours with the recent question that came to me from a friend, an advisor friend, who built his practice under, shall we say, a well-known independent broker-dealer. So we'll call him Jim. And Jim sent me this message recently and said, Michael, I built my practice by doing the right things for my client from day one, and I've always acted as a fiduciary to my clients. It's just good business. Why do we have to make this about RIAs versus broker-dealers instead of just talking about who's doing the right thing for their clients? So, amen, Jim. Great question. And I'm seeing this discussion come up more and more lately, particularly from those who work under a broker-dealer and really do try to give advice in the best interest of their clients and maybe only use commission-based products when it's genuinely prudent to do so because it's actually what the client needs. But here's the challenge and why it matters. From the legal perspective, the nature of the relationship with the client really is different when you're under a broker-dealer versus an RIA. Now, I know we like to all call ourselves advisors, regardless of which channel we work in, but the reality is that technically you can't actually be a fiduciary to a client based on a Series 7 license. Now, I realize that's a strong statement to make, that you can't be a fiduciary to a client based on a Series 7 license. So let me explain further. The Series 7 exam, which is what almost everyone in today's world takes when they're going to work under a broker-dealer, is actually just a short name. The full name for the exam is the General Securities Representative Examination. Now, the general securities part means it pertains to any and all types of investment securities. So we have the Series 6, which is a mutual fund and variable products securities representative, and then the Series 7 is a general securities representative exam, and thus it licenses you to do mutual funds, variable annuities, but also stocks and corporate bonds and munis and direct participation programs, etc. But it's the second part of the Series 7 exam title that matters here. It's the General Securities Representative exam. Representative of what? Representative of the broker-dealer. In other words, when you take the Series 7 exam, quite literally, it's a license to allow you to represent the broker-dealer in the sale of its products. That's why you have to be sponsored by a broker-dealer to take the exam, because you can't, working directly as an independent advisor with the client, and a Series 7 exam. You're a representative of the broker-dealer. They have to sponsor you to take the exam so you can become their rep. Similarly, that's why you have to put on your business card, the footnote of your website, any piece of paper you ever hand to the client. It always says, so-and-so is a registered representative of the such-and-such broker-dealer. Because legally, you're not there to give advice to the client. In fact, it's not even actually your client. It's the broker's-dealer's client, and you are a sales representative of the broker-dealer. Now, I know that sounds harsh for some of you that are working in a broker-dealer. You may be angry with me right now for calling you a sales rep, but please don't shoot the messenger. It's just the actual legal reality of how the laws are written. In fact, the whole reason you're not subject to a fiduciary duty now as a Series 7 rep under the Investment Advisors Act of 1940 is that the Advisors Act has an exclusion that says if you work for a broker-dealer and your advice is solely incidental to the sale of brokerage products, you don't have to become an RIA. So literally, the only way you avoid being an RIA under current law is that you have to not be in the business of giving advice and primarily be in the business of selling the products of your broker-dealer. And here's why that matters from the perspective of this question of being a fiduciary to your client. Because when it's not your client, it's the broker-dealer's client, and you work as a sales rep for your broker-dealer's products, legally, your duty is not to the client. It actually can't be. Your duty is to the broker-dealer that you represent. That's why when you leave a broker-dealer, you can't take your client information with you. You can't take your client files. You can't take the financial plans. You can't even take a list of their account numbers. At best, the broker protocol only allows you to take basic names and contact information, and really that's just because you could look it up online anyway at this point. It's not private information. Similarly, that's why even if you mention to your clients that you're planning to change broker-dealers, your broker-dealer can terminate you. And it's not just because they're afraid you're going to leave and want to preemptively fire you. It's because soliciting clients for your new business while you're still a representative of their business is a breach of your employment contract with your broker-dealer. And that's why taking client information is illegal, because it's not your client information. It's not your client. It's the broker-dealer's client. It's the broker-dealer's client information. And legally, you are a sales rep of the broker-dealer. And that's why even under the Department of Labor's fiduciary proposal, as the broker, you would not actually be signing the best interest contract with your client. The contract gets signed with the broker-dealer because technically the broker-dealer is the one with the client relationship and the broker-dealer is the one going to be held to a fiduciary duty. Now, obviously, if you work under a broker-dealer as their rep, if the BD has a fiduciary obligation, they will impose and expect that down on you, but it's still subject to their oversight because technically you're still not the fiduciary. The broker-dealer is the fiduciary. You're the fiduciary's rep. Now, it's worth noting that in today's environment, the overwhelming majority of those who work in a broker-dealer actually are dual registered as a sales representative of their broker-dealer and work either under their corporate RIA or maybe a hybrid advisor with their own outside RIA. And in that case, you're effectively wearing two hats. One truly is a fiduciary under the RIA, and the other is as a sales rep for the broker-dealer. And so when you sell a product and earn a commission, you're not an advisor, you're not a fiduciary, you're a sales representative. When you separately give actual advice under the RIA and get paid an advisory fee, then you're actually operating as a fiduciary. Although notably, even in that scenario, you're actually technically still a rep. You're an investment advisor representative, or IAR, of the corporate RIA. But that actually still means it's not your client. You must honor your employment contract with your RIA first and foremost. But since the RIA is held to a fiduciary duty and they want you as their rep to honor that, they'll be held accountable, so you're held accountable. But here's the key point in the context of the earlier conversation about why trying to do the right thing for your client and acting as a fiduciary is different than whether you legally are one. Because, I mean, it's pretty universal that trying to do the right thing for your client is good for business in the long run. I know because I know most advisors do this. I meet thousands of broker-dealers when I speak at their national conferences, and I know that most of us in the industry are really trying to do the right thing for our clients, and not because we're legally obligated to, simply because we did this to help people, and it's good for business to help them. But the legal reality is still that you're not a fiduciary, and you can't be a fiduciary that puts your client's interests first in all situations, because you actually have a primary legal obligation to represent your broker-dealer and their interests instead. And the very fact that you're operating under Series 6 or Series 7 license, which again literally are sales representative examinations, it has rep in the title, precludes your ability to fully act as a fiduciary for clients. Now, again, you may still be doing the right thing for your clients regardless of all of this legal stuff and say it's a moot point. But the problem is still that you're not obligated to, or more accurately, that we'll say the other brokers in your firm are not obligated to. And this is why the media picks on it. Because the only thing the other reps in your firm are obligated to do is provide their disclosure information to every client, affirm basic suitability before they sell the highest commission product they possibly can. And it's legal because it was a product sale, not advice, caveat emptor, not subject to the fiduciary duty. So think of it from the other perspective. Imagine you're a bad advisor, or you're not even an advisor. You're an evil sales dude whose goal is to get as many clients as possible to part with as much money as of their money as you can. So basically, you have three choices. Number one, steal their money. Number two, sell products that pay giant commissions. Number three, get paid a 1% advisory fee. Now, number one, stealing it is outright illegal in any world, so not a very appealing option. Number three, getting paid a 1% advisory fee, really slow way to take your client's money. Not really helpful if you're trying to do bad things. But number two, overwhelm people with disclosures, make your sales pitch, get them to say yes once in a moment of weakness, and then they can't take it back because now there's surrender charges and you get 10% of their net worth of everyone you meet. That's a pretty sweet opportunity. And that's why the fiduciary duty matters. It's not about trying to force you, the brokers who's already trying to do the right thing, to do the right thing. It's to raise the minimum bar on what the worst person in your organization might do if they wanted to be nefarious. Because again, as a Series 7 rep, you have no obligation to be a fiduciary. It might be good long-term business to do the right thing. Unfortunately, it's also really good short-term business to sell the crap out of the highest commission product you can find and cash out and move on to another business if you have to. And so as long as that tension exists, as long as there are sales reps at broker-dealers who are only obligated to fulfill their obligations to their broker-dealer and have no obligations to the client and are subject to lower standards, this will continue to be an issue. And especially as long as sales reps continue to hold out to the public as advisors, because now the public can't actually tell who's a sales rep and who's a fiduciary. Except they sort of can, as the media now has picked up, because sales reps by definition work at broker-dealers and fiduciaries work under an RIA. And that's why you're seeing this dynamic emerge, where what started out as fiduciary versus suitability is now morphing into advisors versus salespeople and RIAs versus broker-dealers. But the bottom line, getting back to Jim's question, is that if you don't like this environment and being called a salesperson and dealing with the scrutiny on you, frankly, I'd ask you to consider how you're structured and whether you want to change it. Because as long as you choose to operate under a Series 7's license as a sales rep of a broker-dealer, you are legally a sales rep. That's the job. That's the legal status. That's why you have a duty to your broker-dealer. That's why they can fire you for breaching it. That's why you can't take your clients when you leave. That's certainly why you can't sell the business and the clients in it the way that you can with an RIA. Which means if you actually want to operate as an advisor and hold out that way and not be a sales rep, you need to be affiliated with an RIA. That's just the legal reality of how the rules are structured. Now, ironically, if the fiduciary rule does not get delayed and actually goes through, then suddenly everyone, regardless of whether they're at a broker-dealer or an RIA, actually becomes subject to the same fiduciary duty, regardless of whether the client engages through a BD or an RIA. And then actually this whole fiduciary discussion and even much of the discussion about RIAs versus broker-dealers will become a moot point. So, if you're frustrated with this in a broker-dealer environment, you should actually be hoping the fiduciary rule goes through from the Department of Labor, because it levels the playing field. It takes this off the plate as an objection, because now at least the broker-dealer is going to be held to a similar fiduciary duty as the RIA, and so it's no longer this differentiating discussion, at least pertaining to retirement investors, because that's the limited scope of the DOL's rule. But I hope that helps as just some food for thought around fiduciary versus suitability and why we're seeing this morph into an RIA versus broker-dealer discussion. So this is Office Hours with Michael Kitces, 1 p.m. East Coast time on Tuesdays. Thanks for joining us, and have a great day, everyone.